המנצח אל שושנים, עדות לאסף מזמור. רואי ישראל האזין, הנוהי כצאן יוסף יושב הקרבים מופיע לפני אפרים ובנימין ומנשה, עוררה את גבורתך ולך לישועת לנו. אלוהים השיבנו והאר פניך ונבשע.
Shalom, grace, and welcome to this week's edition of Peninei Torah, Pearls of Torah with Yeshivat Shuvu. I'm Al-Tsur Cabeza Perez, and this week's Torah portion is Parashat Korach, found in the book of Bamidbar, Numbers, chapter 16. Now, this week's Torah portion is a very important Torah portion, an extremely important lesson that we all need to learn, no matter what our background is, no matter what position we have in our congregations, in our communities, even at work, in our daily lives. This week's Torah portion speaks about basically honoring the authority that is above us. The authority that in some way, shape, or form Adonai has allowed or established himself. And so we have the example of Korach, who is a member of the people of Israel, a member of the tribe of Levi. Yet that was not good enough for him. The duties and the functions and the calling that he had been given, that his family had been given, was not good enough for him. He had his own selfish ambitions. Now we learned in last week's Torah portion about the 12 spies that 10 had their own selfish concerns, and they were not concerned for the well-being and the future of their people. We saw that example of bad leadership. And then we had the example of good leadership. Caleb and Yehoshua, Caleb and Joshua, Moshe and Aaron. Those who were willing to give their lives for the community, even if what they had to say to the community was not what they wanted to hear. They still spoke truth because they knew that truth and the will of Adonai is what's best for the people anyways. And they were willing to give up the popular opinion, to give up even the support of the people if necessary, as long as the interest of Adonai and the best interest of the people was what they had in mind. And so we see now that the rebellion continues, because in every generation, in every circumstance, there are always those who are not content with what Adonai has given them and what calling he has given them. And so we begin our Torah portion in chapter 16, beginning at verse 1. And I'm going to read the first few verses down to 11 so we get a good context of what's going on before we start discussing everything. In chapter 16, verse 1, it says, Now Korach, the son of Ishar, the son of Kohat, the son of Levi, with Datan and Abiram, the sons of Eliav, and On, the son of Pelet, sons of Reuben, took men, and they rose up before Moses with some of the children of Israel, 250 leaders of the congregation, representatives of the congregation, men of renown. They gathered together against Moses and Aaron, and they said to them, You take too much upon yourselves, for all the congregation is holy, every one of them, and Adonai is among them. Why then do you exalt yourselves above the assembly of Adonai? So when Moses heard it, he fell on his face, and he spoke to Korach and all his company, saying, Tomorrow morning Adonai will show who is his and who is holy, and will cause him to come near to him. That one whom he chooses, he will cause to come near to him. Do this: take censers, Korach and all your company, put fire in them, and put incense in them before Adonai tomorrow. And it shall be that man whom Adonai chooses is the Holy One. You take too much upon yourselves, you sons of Levi. Then Moses said to Korach, Hear now, you sons of Levi. Is it a small thing to you that the Elohim of Israel has separated you from the congregation of Israel to bring you near to himself, to do the work of the tabernacle of Adonai, and to stand before the congregation to serve them? And that he has brought you near to himself, you and all your brethren, the sons of Levi, with you. And are you seeking the priesthood also? Uvikashtem gam kehuna. This is a very significant statement. Therefore you and all your company are gathered together against Adonai. Against Adonai. And what is Aaron that you complain against him? You see, it wasn't good enough for Korach that he was set apart from the rest of the children of Israel. It wasn't good enough for him that he had a place of honor and leadership according to the function and gifts that Adonai has given him. He wanted the priesthood. He wanted the position that Aaron had. He challenged Moses and Aaron. But as Moses himself reveals, when you challenge those who were appointed by Hashem, you challenge Hashem himself because you question his judgment. Now we see that he was smart enough, Korach, in his own mind, to gather unto himself or to take lakach, to take people that were respected leaders, if you will. And he reasoned as to why they should rebel against Moses and Aaron. You see, this is something that repeats itself throughout history. There are those who call themselves disciples of Messiah and reason among themselves that they're not happy with the position that they've been given. They're not happy enough with being able to come and share and participate with the covenants of Israel. Instead, they would like to replace Israel. And there are those who are not satisfied with just replacing Israel on a theological level. They wish to attack Israel and the Jewish community in everything they say and do. They may disguise themselves as anti-Zionist. They may disguise themselves as anti-rabbinic. But at the end of the day, it's all different forms of replacement theology. And yes, some of them even call themselves Hebrew roots. Yet they hate the Jewish people. You cannot have Hebrew roots without the Jewish community. Adonai, like in our Torah portion, has selected certain individuals and certain groups of people for specific tasks. If you're not content with your calling, then the person that you are truly rebelling against is Adonai himself. And we'll see that. So first, I would like to go to the commentary of Da'at Zikanim to see exactly what it is that Korach is really up to. There's an interesting observation that Da'at Zikanim makes on the numerical value of the name Korach. The numerical value of the letters in his name are 308, which is equivalent to the word Shaddad, Shin Dalet Dalet, which means to destroy, to lay waste, or even to rob. He did not observe the commandments of the Most High. In other words, he wished to rob the position that did not belong to him. And by doing so, was violating the Torah. You see, people can come and say that they worship the God of Israel. But our Master Yeshua gave us a very good definition of who truly worships or is a lover of the God of Israel. Those who bear fruit. Those who bear the fruit of the Spirit. Love, joy, peace. These are the things that pertain to the Spirit of the Most High. You will know them by their fruit. Unfortunately, a lot of people with the Protestant mindset tend to attack one another based on differences of opinion. And it is important to clarify and to remove false doctrines from people's mind and to confront those false doctrines. But that does not mean that we should automatically attack one another. We need to separate a difference of opinion or a correct teaching from a false teaching and still recognize the individual by the fruit that they bear. I myself know individuals who I strongly disagree with their belief system. But if they bear the fruit of the Spirit in their walk, there's hope for that individual through dialogue, through study, through prayer. On the other hand, there may be someone who has the same concept that I have, but if they bear no fruit, if they don't have the fruits of the Spirit, then that ideology that they share is not being practiced. And so in the situation with Korach, he himself is not practicing Torah. He may act like he wants to be a representative of Torah, but in the act of being discontent with what he has been called to do and try to rob the position of another, he is in fact violating the Torah. And so we see in the commentary of Or HaChaim the following information that sheds a lot of context to this parasha. It says, Korach claimed that Aaron was not specifically suited to be high priest, seeing there were people more qualified than he, supposedly. Concerning the argument that there were people better qualified than Aaron, Moses said that God would demonstrate whom he had chosen, who had been designated for this task since creation. We have a parallel situation where Elohim told Jeremiah the prophet that he had selected him for his task already before he was born. Now, this has nothing to do with the pagan concept of predestination as taught in certain circles. It simply reveals to us that Adonai knows the hearts of men. He knows from the very beginning who would choose him and who would follow through in faithfulness until the end. Now, that doesn't mean that individuals don't make mistakes as they go. And it certainly does not mean that they're robots without the freedom to choose between right and wrong, as we see throughout the Torah. Continuing with the Midrash of Or HaChaim, it states, the Torah tells us that Korach was a very clever man. He took stock of the factors which would give him a chance to rally the people around him. The Torah goes on to say, Vedatan ve'aviram, and Datan and Aviram, to tell us that Korach took them with him in order to challenge Moses also on their behalf, seeing that they were the most important members of the tribe of Reuben, Jacob's firstborn son. These were the factors which encouraged these three men to claim a superior status vis-a-vis Moses and Aaron, who were descended only from the third of Jacob's sons. You see, people will try to reason with themselves why they have replaced the natural branches of Israel. Maybe whatever mistakes they have made, whatever imperfections they have. But at the end of the day, the gifts and the calling of Adonai are irrevocable, as we have seen and will continue to see through this parasha. Continuing with this midrash, it says, it becomes clear that Jacob was perceived as a tree which 12 branches emerged from, one of which was Levi. This branch in turn produced 3 new branches, Gershom, Kehat, and Merari. Kehat himself produced 4 branches, Amram, Yitzchar, Hebron, and Uziel. The branch produced by Yitzhar was Korach. As soon as Korach tried to tamper with the order of holiness which the Torah had laid down and tried to interfere with who was accorded the priesthood, all the branches of holiness going right back to the root of his soul became flawed. Up until this time, all these branches had contributed positively to Korach's status as a distinguished person. The process of these sources of Korach's stature, his holiness, became flawed, commencing with Korach himself, because he caused his own branch to become flawed. This is exactly what we read in the book of Romans. We are all but branches either connected to the tree of Israel or connected to the nations of this world. In the case of Korach, he was already connected to the olive tree of Israel. Yet he tried to replace another branch whose functions did not pertain to his. And we are told by Or HaChaim, based on this Torah portion, that by doing so, he ruined and flawed his own branch. This is exactly the understanding that Rav Shaul extends to those who have been grafted in. We see in the book of Romans, chapter 11, beginning at verse 17, the following. And some of the branches were broken off, and you, being a wild olive tree, were grafted in among them, and with them became a partaker of the root and fatness of the olive tree, never replacing. Do not boast against the branches, but if you do boast, remember that you do not support the root, but the root supports you. In verse 29, we are told clearly, for the gifts and the calling of Elohim are irrevocable. Now, we can reason amongst ourselves and lie to ourselves why we can replace someone else, why we deserve the status or function of someone else. But at the end of the day, what Adonai has established is irrevocable. He himself is who chose to place certain people in certain positions. In our parasha, we see that Aaron is whom he chose to be the high priest. And this priesthood is something very important and something that extends to the rest of us in some way, shape, or form or another. We see the very interesting explanation of the 19 letters of Ben Uziel, which is a spiritual presentation on the principles of Judaism that enlightens us on the election of the Jewish people and what the purpose of this was and how this corresponds with the priesthood, this priesthood that was coveted by Korach. And so in the 19 letters of Ben Uziel, it states, in Abraham there was chosen a progenitor of this people, referring to the Jewish people. Abraham cast from him his native land, his family, his paternal dwelling, and all which man loves and cherishes, and followed him who called him, referring to Adonai. He accepted the mission to become progenitor of a people from which blessing should come to all the peoples of the earth, which would keep the way of Adonai, to do righteousness and judgment. Keep in mind that that passage that he's quoting from Genesis chapter 12 refers to the grafting in as well. Continuing, he says, these sentiments were transmitted as an inheritance to Isaac, his son, and to Jacob, his grandson. In the lives of these individuals, Elohim revealed himself as the invisible ruling providence until they had grown into a family of 70 persons. Egypt, which at that time enjoyed the highest perfection of human culture, and which looked upon its soil and its rivers as its gods, Egypt became the cradle of misery, in which Israel passed its infancy of preparation for its sublime mission. As reward for a benefit of originating from one of them, referring to Yosef, they were invited to make their home in the Nile land. They were first guests, the citizens, then citizens. But Egypt, revering only material possessions, knew not that all one, the Holy One, blessed be He. They saw not in all human beings His children, and in the arrogance of its power, it treacherously disregarded the rights of hospitality and humanity to their guests, and made Israel its slaves. From the hands of God, it received freedom and nationality, referring to the people of Israel. And as object of this all, the revelation of His will as guidance for human life, the Holy Torah, the instructions of our Creator. In the wilderness, it received the Torah, and thus in the wilderness, without land or soil, it became a nation. It became a body whose soul was the Torah, and therefore could be truthfully called Mamlechet Kohanim, a kingdom of priests. For as the priest, the Kohen, in the midst of a single people was, this nation was to be in the midst of universal mankind. In other words, exactly what Aaron was to the Jewish community is what the Jewish community is called to be for all of humanity. Now, this is a very, very important revelation that we must all take into account. Because when we see the principle of someone within the camp rising above someone else who has a particular position and calling and wanting to steal that position from them, to replace that position, and reasoning and getting others to come and support their rebellion, and even twisting the words of Adonai himself for their own selfish ambition, this is a destruction that causes branches to be broken, whether they were in naturally or whether they were grafted in, as we see by Rav Shaul. Someone who tries to replace something that Adonai has already established will be cut off. Now, the purpose of this priesthood is order, an order that brings others closer to the Holy One. The priest was set apart more than everyone else for the purpose of helping others be closer to the Creator. And this is exactly what the Jewish community has been called to do to the rest of the world, to be a light to the nations. And they have done so through producing the Messiah, who is Jewish. Yeshua is Jewish. But also by the words of Torah. We would not have a Bible in any language had it not been for the Jewish community preserving the scriptures, the Hebrew scriptures, in the Holy Tongue. And many of the translations that we have are flawed, and they are not the exact perfection of the Holy Scriptures. But Baruch Hashem for the translations that we have, because if it wasn't for that, many of us who are not familiar with the Hebrew language wouldn't be able to even get to know the message, at least on a simple level. But nonetheless, Adonai chose a people to preserve this structure, this instruction that was for all mankind to different degrees. But nevertheless, the moral code in the Torah is for all mankind. And so we see, regarding this concept of the priesthood of the people of Israel, that is extended from the example of the priest within the people of Israel, is explained further in Or HaChaim, which says, there is another aspect to the meaning of being Mamlechet Kohanim, a kingdom of priests, and a holy nation. We have explained in connection with the meaning Segulah, a cherished treasure, that there are sparks of holiness scattered throughout the globe, and that it is the task of the Jewish people to attract these sparks and fuse them into a solid body of holiness. The reason that the people of Israel, the Jewish community, have been chosen as a kingdom of priests is not that they can be an elite group that is better than everyone else. It is because they have been trained and entrusted with the Torah of righteousness, the instructions of our Creator, so that they can help others that are the scattered sparks of our Creator that are among the nations. Some natural branches cut off, some wild branches from the nations, but nonetheless children of the Most High who are called to return to the Creator and to His instructions and to His people. And they are a kingdom of priests that are called to help others by preserving these instructions, by preserving this culture, by preserving the ways of Adonai. And it is through them that we, humanity as a whole, have been given the Messiah, Yeshua. And so, with this understanding, we see the significance of the emissary Kepha in 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 9, extending this priesthood to those who have been grafted in through the command of Messiah himself. In 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 9 through 15, it says, "But you are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, His own special people, that may proclaim the praises of Him who called you out of darkness into His marvelous light. who once were not a people but are now the people of God, who had not obtained mercy but now have obtained mercy. Beloved, I beg you as sojourners and pilgrims, toshvim vegerim, abstain from fleshly lusts which war against the soul, having your conduct honorable among the Gentiles, that when they speak against you as evildoers, they may, by your good works, which is obviously observation of the commandments of the Most High, which they observe, glorify God in the day of visitation. So we do Torah to glorify God, not ourselves. Therefore submit yourself to every ordinance of man, for Adonai's sake, whether to the king as supreme, or to governors, as to those who are sent by him for the punishment of evildoers, and for the praise of those who do good. For this is the will of Elohim, that by doing good you may put to silence the ignorance of foolish men. We are told to submit ourselves to the authority. Do you think that Kepha is speaking specifically about the pagan, idolatrous Roman government of his generation, and not including all government, all leadership, especially the Jewish leadership that was founded on Torah, the words of Adonai himself? Kepha is telling us to submit to all leadership for the glory of Adonai. The only time we reject any type of leadership or any type of law, be it secular or whatever it may be, is if it specifically contradicts that which is written in the Holy Torah. As we see the example of Daniel and his friends who refused to bow down and worship a man or a graven image. In that case, of course, we're to reject whatever authority is telling us to violate the authority of the Most High. But as long as the authority, any authority, is not going against the words of the Most High, we are to obey and be humble, as instructed by the emissary Kepha. And this is a very important thing, that we must learn to respect the authorities that are over us, especially those who have preserved the holy tongue, the instructions of our Creator. Unfortunately, there are those who are a distraction in this restoration of the believers in Messiah who are returning to the Jewish roots of the faith, because there are no Hebrew roots without the Jewish community. There are those who are a distraction even to the Jewish believers in Messiah. On both sides, there are distractions, because the enemy is trying his hardest to stop the unity that is coming and will come through the Messiah's Spirit, restored in the context of Torah and his people. And these distractions tend to challenge the authority and position that was established from the beginning of time. Adonai has established the Jewish community as those who have preserved his word, his commandments, his holy tongue. And those who are grafted into Messiah should follow the example of Yosef, who humbly loved his brothers even when he was not accepted by them. Because we all know that in the end, we will all be united. Whether you're Jewish, whether you're from the Anusim, whether you're a grafted and sojourner from the nations. In the eyes of Adonai, those who love him and hold on to his ways and follow them are beloved by him and will be together as one at the return of Messiah Yeshua. And so we continue with this example in the parashah of how we are to act with those who are anti-Semitic, anti-Zionist, anti-rabbinic, however they want to camouflage their hate for Adonai. Because they might act like they're challenging the people of Adonai, or those who he has chosen to put in positions of authority. But as we see in the parashah, who they are really challenging is Adonai himself, and questioning his decision making, and questioning his mercy. We've all made mistakes. We all make mistakes. But when we take a position to challenge the Creator and what he has established, that is a dark path that we should not follow. In chapter 16, beginning at verse 20, we see the following. It says, "And Adonai spoke to Moses and to Aaron, saying, Separate yourselves from among this congregation, that I may consume them in a moment. Then they fell on their faces and said, O Elohim, the Elohim of the spirits of all flesh, shall one man sin, and you be angry with the whole congregation? So Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the congregation, saying, Get away from the tents of Korach, Dathan, and Abiram. Then Moses rose and went to Dathan and Abiram, and the elders of Israel followed him. And he spoke to the congregation, saying, Depart now from the tents of these wicked men. Touch nothing of theirs, lest you be consumed in all their sins. So they got away from around the tents of Korach and Dathan and Abiram. And Dathan and Abiram came out and stood at the door of their tents, with their wives, their sons, and their little children." Those who are obedient to the Creator have to follow the words of Moses. And Moses tells the people to get away from such people. Yeshua himself tells us in Matthew 5, if you don't believe in Moses, how will you believe me? If you don't believe in Moses, you don't believe in Messiah Yeshua. At least you don't believe in him correctly, as he explains to us. And we must separate from all those who come against the children of Israel, against those who have been elected by Adonai, against anyone that has been chosen for a specific task. We must separate ourselves from those who come to challenge what Adonai has established from the beginning of creation. We're not going to get along in a perfect harmony until Messiah himself comes. And we're not going to agree about everything. And yes, there are many mistakes that we can point out in any given group, because none are righteous. Only Mashiach is completely righteous. But when we pursue righteousness, the righteousness of Adonai, in that process we are being refined and becoming righteous in the merits of the Messiah. Even those who have not had that particular revelation yet, because they will. As long as you continue to pursue the righteousness of Adonai, eventually there will be a generation that has that final revelation, and we will all be unified. Until then, we continue to study the scripture, continue to study the word of Adonai, whether they be from the Christian world who has acknowledged the Messiah but rejected the instructions of the Creator, or whether it be from our Jewish brothers and sisters who seek to obey the instructions of the Creator but have not yet had the final revelation of Messiah. Either side has made mistakes, but at the end of the day, they are both the children of Adonai. Those who believe in the Bible, those who believe in the God of Israel in sincerity and truth, do belong to Adonai. And the Messiah is unifying all of these people through the spirit of sanctification. But when there are those amongst the children of God that are causing division and causing people to hate one another, separate yourself from people like this. It's okay to disagree, it's okay to dispute for the sake of the kingdom. But when it comes to hatred and speech that is against the order and structure that was established in the Holy Torah, we must separate ourselves from people like this. And that is what we learn in this parasha. And this is also echoed by Rav Shaul, the emissary, in Ephesians chapter 5, verse 6 through 7, which says, "Let no one deceive you with empty words. For because of these things, the wrath of Elohim comes upon the sons of disobedience. Therefore, do not be partakers with them." Now, we can disagree on theology and doctrine, but at the end of the day, we must judge a tree by its fruit, as our Master Yeshua has revealed to us. And if that fruit is discord, if that fruit is hate, if that fruit is negative speech of others, then we need to separate from them. That doesn't mean we can't say that someone's wrong. We can clearly point out when something is wrong, when there is a false teaching, but we have to do so in the spirit of love and be willing to reconcile. But there is no reconciliation with those who take a position that the people of God are cursed, that the land of God is not meant to be restored. This is a direct contradiction against the word of Adonai. And this principle can be applied even within ourselves, in our congregations, in our communities. We need to honor our leadership. And if there is a problem with leadership, we need to humbly do as Rav Shaul has told us, as he explained to Timothy, to reason with an elder as with a father, with love. Reason with each other. Let's not attack one another. Attack the false doctrines, attack the false teachings, but be very careful when we point at specific individuals and raise accusations against them specifically. We need to do so within the context of knowing exactly what's being spoken, and we need to focus on the teaching and the doctrine that needs to be eliminated and uprooted, and not so much against the person. Because if there's hope for the person, then we need to try our very best to bring others back into the truth. So let's grow in maturity. Let's do things in the order that the scriptures have established for us to establish. And let's pray for one another. Let's reason with one another. And let's respect our authorities, especially those who have been given to us by Adonai himself. Shavua Tov.